Dear colleagues, we continue our working day at Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and the topic of the next press briefing is announcing the action to support Mejlis. And our speakers are Riza, Shevkiev, Yevgenia Andriyuk, Deputy Coordinator Crimea SOS, and Vladyslav Olenchenko, Deputy Member of Democratic Alliance, and Schaaf, Coordinator of Freedom House Program. The first one to speak is Shevkiev. Good afternoon. Today we want to speak about the court hearing connected with Mejlis that will be held on the 29th of September, that will be in Moscow. Crimean Tatar movement, starting from Stalin times, devoted to the principles of non-violent struggle for its rights, and this principle of national movement was provided to Kurultai of Crimean people and Mejlis of Crimean Tatars, and they supported this idea and adhered to the principles of non-violent struggle. We understood that we are not huge in numbers, and we cannot fight in other ways. That's why we support this principle. But with occupation of Crimea by the Russian Federation, they want to silence Crimean people, the people of Crimea, and they do not allow to express opinions. And democratically elected Mejlis started to be persecuted, and in the first months of occupation, they started to liquidate material base of Mejlis, and they started to persecute and seize property of charitable organization Crimea Fund that provided to Mejlis its facilities, transport vehicles, and other resources, because it believed in the framework of its statute that Mejlis is the representative body of this people, and all the activity of it is directed to support the Tatar people in Crimea. Then so they didn't allow to work to the fund and to director, and I'm the director of this fund, and we went to Kiev and registered here, and the proceedings continue in Russia against us, and these proceedings, they have empty claims towards us, and they are false, because there is an order of Kremlin. They do not want us to support Mejlis, and they started to pressure Mejlis and separate members of Mejlis, and disrupt our work in occupied Crimea. So the part of members of Mejlis had to move to the mainland Ukraine, and part of them were repressed and taken hostage, and the process was started in the attempt to blame Mejlis of extremism and even terrorism. In this way, Kremlin leadership of Russia tries to deprive indigenous people of Crimea of their status of indigenous people and deprive it of a voice, to the right to express our thoughts and our requirements through representative bodies such as Mejlis of Crimean Tatar people. That's why on the 29th at 11, at the initiative of our friends that are here, we decided to hold a meeting on Maidan and to address with the announcements and declarations and urging our partners, all democratic world, that condemn Russian aggression. So maybe I will end with this, and Yevgenia Andriyuk is given the floor. Good afternoon. On the 26th of February, the day the pro-Ukrainian meeting in Simferopol was organized, the Crimean Tatars were consolidated and they showed their pro-Ukrainian position from the start of occupation. They were persecuted by different methods, started from forced disappearances and also criminal persecutions, and the cultural activities and language were suppressed, and culture as well. Also, occupation forces started to use the systematic pressure and tried to destroy all the structures of Crimean Tatar people starting from 2014. They didn't allow the leaders of the Crimean Tatar people to come to Crimea, and also they seized the property, and there were other means of pressure. And in 2016, the Russian occupation forces resort to more dangerous methods, and they started the case to ban Mejlis, to say that they are extremists. And we should understand that Mejlis is not only NGO, it's a body of self-governance of Crimean Tatars that has officially exists for 25 years and defend the rights of Crimean Tatars. And I would like to stress that Mejlis is not only 33 members of Mejlis at the central level, but also this is the regional network where there are more than 250 people at regional level, and on all those actions to defend the rights in 25 years they were organized by the regional Mejlises. Also, it is of importance that this ban of Mejlis is not only the ban of Mejlis itself, but also this deprives Crimean Tatar of their right for self-identification. And the Crimean Tatars, they are indigenous population, and they are the part of and the indigenous people and the Russian population do not have the right for self-identification because they are not subject to decide in any way the statehood of Crimea. That's why by banning Mejlis, Russia do not only ban this body, but it deprives the people the right for self-identification. And also, as lawyers, we also believe that repressions can spiral because occupation forces try to jail Crimean Tatars after this ban of Mejlis. That's why we, as lawyers, we joined this action, and we addressed to our colleagues to join to this action and to show our position that this practice of Russian Federation is not allowed. Thank you very much. And now the floor is given to Vladyslav Olenchenko.
Good afternoon. Political Party Democratic Alliance is one of co-organizers of this action in support of Mejlis of Crimean Tatar people. On our side, with this action, we would like to communicate very simple idea that the Kremlin management, Kremlin leadership has been pursuing the policy of extinction of the whole nation, Crimean Tatar people, and we are concerned that the history knows the precedent that Crimean Tatars were almost exterminated by Russia. The mass executions took place in 1937, and then the whole nation was deported. Similar practices of Russia, the Russian Federation tried to implement in the first months after the Russian Federation invaded the territory of Ukraine. We remember how RF was saying that Ukrainians are not a nation, that they are just small Russians. This policy evokes deep concern because courts in Russian federations are biased, and we understand what decision, what judgment will be issued on Friday. That is why we plan our action on September 29th, on Thursday at 11 o'clock a.m. and we invite everyone to take part in rally on Maidan the same day. We expect support from many European countries where the same actions will be carried out as well as in the USA. In the near vicinity of the Russian Federation's embassy. We will get support from civilized countries demonstrating to the RF that they will not be allowed to exterminate the whole nation and to occupy parts of Ukraine. The actions should signal that Ukrainians and Crimean Tatars will fight for the occupation of Ukrainian territory and punishment of the aggressor. Good afternoon. I am a director of the representative office of Freedom House in Ukraine. Freedom House would like to voice out our solidarity with Crimean Tatar people who will go to the rally on Maidan on September 29th against the repressions in Crimea, and to the other Crimean residents who support Ukrainian identity and are repressed by Russia. We work with NGOs, and we see that civil rights on the peninsula, Crimean Peninsula, have been grossly violated in Crimea. So all people who do not agree with the Russian Federation's authorities, they are repressed, oppressed, and Russification of the peninsula includes application of Russian laws on extremism, on bans on assemblies and meetings. The Crimea, according to our reports, demonstrate even worse situation than the Russian Federation in general. The voting into Russian Duma, which was conducted, it does not justify the annexation of Crimea, and civil rights activists in Crimea, we can support them via international institutions and support of other countries. Very small mechanisms are available to influence the situation in Crimea. Only international representations, presence of representation of OSCE, UN representatives in Crimea may help. They should be there on continuous basis and cover the situation. This is especially important because independent journalists, civil rights activists, and other independent observers have almost fled from the peninsula. The Crimean issue should be on agenda. It should not be ignored. Diplomatic missions of the countries allies of Ukraine, it should be raised everywhere and frequently, and it should be on the agenda of civil society, of those people who will go to the street on September 29th in Kiev in order to force Ukrainian state to speak on this topic everywhere and every time, as frequently as possible. Inna Aksionova, Crimea areas. What will the action demonstrate? What slogans will be used? What banners? The action will be rather standard format. There will be several speakers from stakeholders from international community, people's deputies, members of parliament, and members of Mejlis, and banners. This will be just a standard rally of the kind, and if some information from Moscow will come from the start of this action, we will be watching the court sitting. We will be waiting for news, pieces of news from the court sitting. In other cities there will be rallies like this with the same banners and slogans, and we hope that diaspora and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will cooperate in this action with us massively. Today we have advised and decided not to take a rally near the embassy of the Russian Federation. We will gather at Maidan. That is why we invite all Kievites and people from other cities of Ukraine to go to Maidan for this rally in order to save not only Crimean Tatar peoples but Ukraine, Europe, and the whole world from the starting fascism plague in Russia. Because persecutions of Mejlis by ethnic origin, this is fascist acts of fascism, and we will soon see how they will go further. They will not stop until and unless the world community takes sanctions, not so insufficient and as they now. The actions should become stricter. Russian economy development should be prevented in order to force them to stop persecutions, and the court proceedings against Crimean Tatar Mejlis just demonstrate us that the sanctions are insufficient. I already told that we use non-violent struggle methods, but they work to exterminate members and the whole Crimean Tatar Tatar nation and members of Mejlis, and such actions may cause a very dangerous influence on the entire climate in the entire Europe. We should address international institutions so that we have support from them, and the sanctions against Russia are strengthened as well. Thank you, dear friends, at the end of press conference.
Шановні колеги, на цьому
Colleagues, at the end of the day, working day in Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and our agenda for tomorrow will appear on our website in half an hour.